Hey there, everyone, and welcome to Pour and Explore, a wine, food, and travel podcast. I'm your host, Nick Elliott, the wine guy. I'd love to be your go-to guide for all things wine, food, and the amazing places they take us. Here on Pour and Explore, we'll sip, savor, and wander through the exciting world of wine, discuss incredible cuisines, and uncover the stories behind unforgettable destinations. Each week, I'll bring you lively conversations with wine experts, chefs, travel pros, and fellow enthusiasts. We'll share practical tips, hilarious tales, and plenty of inspiration to fuel your next adventure. So grab a glass, pull up a chair, and join me as we pour, explore, and celebrate the good life. Let's dive in. Hello out there to all of my wine lovers. Welcome to another episode of Pour and Explore, a wine, food, and travel podcast. I'm your host, Nick Elliott, your friendly neighborhood sommelier, wine educator, and travel guide through the worlds of all things delicious. You know, a couple weeks ago, I did an episode on dessert wine, kind of shone a spotlight on all of the beautiful dessert wines from around the world. A really, really beautiful thing. And I wanted to do another episode today about a particular style of wine. And today we are going to be popping the cork on a topic that has symbolized celebration, elegance, and pure joy for centuries. Today we are talking about sparkling wine. You know, from the royal courts of France to the high energy podiums of the Formula One racetrack, sparkling wine has been the go-to drink for special occasions for many, many, many years. But have you ever wondered how those tiny magical bubbles ended up in your glass, or why champagne became the ultimate symbol of luxury? Well, today we're going to dive deep into the history, the significance, and the splendor of sparkling wine. We're going to explore their accidental invention, their cultural impact, and how you can enjoy them like a pro. So if you can, grab yourself a glass of bubbly, or at least a coffee if it's too early. Sit back and let's get started. So we're going to start off with the origins of sparkling wine. You know, just like many drinks, foods, et cetera, sparkling wine was not something that they were going after when they were making up this wine. So we're going to rewind the clock way back to the 17th century in France, and that is where the story of sparkling wine really begins. You may have heard of Dom Perignon. Dom Perignon was actually a Benedictine monk who is often credited with inventing, just like Ben Franklin invented electricity. It was more of a discovery. Dom Perignon discovered champagne. While he didn't actually create it, he did, however, harness the process and turned it into this amazing beverage, so we can still give him a respectful tip of the glass for creating this beautiful, beautiful sparkling beverage. The truth is, sparkling wine was actually an accidental discovery. This is based on historical text. It's based on everything that we know up to this date. And back then, winemakers in the Champagne region of France, that is where Champagne is from. Champagne is not from California. Champagne is not from Italy. Champagne is not from Australia. Champagne is from the Champagne region of France. They were producing a lot of still wine up there. Still wine, in other words, is wine without the bubbles, the other wine that we drink on a daily basis. Because of the cold winters, fermentation would slow down quite a bit and even sometimes stop completely during the fermentation process because it was so chilly out there, and the yeast just became inactive in the fermentation process. If you want to learn more about the fermentation process, hit me with a DM. I'd be happy to explain it to you. And of course, I'm pretty sure we've talked about it in another episode, so go check those out. When spring arrived, after the fermentation had stopped, the temperature started to rise and fermentation would start again. And the main component of fermentation, of that process happening, is the yeast is creating carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide would get produced in the bottle, and the result? Bubbles. And sometimes explosions. And that is the fun part. Winemakers at the time that this was a huge problem, that bottles would just randomly explode in the cellars. And the monks were referring to the bubbles in the wine as the devil's wine. And some even believed at the time, again, we're talking about the 17th century now, some even thought that it was witchcraft. Eventually, though, people started loving the fizz in the wine, that that beautiful bubbly, tickle your tongue, tickle the roof of your mouth, and winemakers worked to control the bubbles rather than to fight them. And just like that, sparkling wine was born. We're going to talk about it in just a second, but the method of making champagne, it is called méthode champenoise because it comes from that region. And in the wine industry, we call that, because it was the first method, we call that the traditional method of making bubbly wine. So now that we know how sparkling wine came to be, let's talk about some of the most famous types. Because, spoiler alert, not all bubbly is champagne. But we are going to start there. Champagne, coming from France, that is the gold standard, the OG, if you will, of sparkling wine. Champagne must come from the Champagne region of France, which is northern France to the east of Paris. It's a beautiful region. They're producing beautiful grapes, Pinot Noir, of course, Chardonnay. Uni Blanc is another great grape that they're producing out there. Pinot Meunier is another one. And I actually misspoke on the Uni Blanc. It is the Pinot Meunier is what they're producing. And it's only those grapes that are allowed into that mixture, into that champagne. You may have seen champagne bottles that say Blanc de Blanc or Blanc Noir, and what that is, the differentiation there is Blanc de Blanc is made with only Chardonnay, and the Blanc Noir is made with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and to some extent the Pinot Meunier as well. Going down a little bit further south into the west, we hit into Spain, and Spain's answer to champagne, made with native grapes there in Spain. It is called cava. Cava, and it is a fantastic budget-friendly alternative to champagne, and pretty easy to find here in the States. Everybody knows about Prosecco. Prosecco is coming to you from Italy, and if champagne is all about the finesse and the structure, Prosecco is all about fruitiness and easy drinking. Champagne is made in a different style. It's made in a different way. It's called Charmat method, and the Charmat method is giving it a lighter, more approachable feel versus champagne, which is a little more rich, a little more complex, etc., etc. Another sparkling wine that is made in the rest of the country, everywhere outside of Champagne, is a sparkling wine called Crémant. So if you have a bottle of sparkling wine that is from France but not from Champagne, that is going to be a Crémant. And then everywhere in the New World, and we're going to specifically talk about California, Australia, and even England, even Great Britain is producing some great sparkling wines right now. So if you're getting wine with bubbles from anywhere else in the world, they are typically called just simply sparkling wine. So depending on whether you want something crisp and elegant, like champagne, something fruity and floral like Prosecco, or rich and nutty like Cava, there is a bubbly for every taste and every occasion. Now, I mentioned earlier in the top of the show that champagne is the ultimate celebratory drink. So, how did it come that way? So, why did sparkling wine become the main drink of celebration? Well, there's a few reasons. Royal endorsement never hurts. We all know how important the monarchy was in Europe during those days. And in the 1700s, French kings loved champagne. Louis XIV in particular drank it religiously, and it made champagne a status symbol. So, you put the royal stamp of approval onto a beverage, everyone is going to get onto that train. Marketing genius also has something to do with it, as most popular things do. There's a marketing genius behind just about everything. And in the 19th century, champagne houses like Veuve Clicquot, Moet Chandon, they branded champagne as the drink of luxury, of course, success, and of romance. Much like here in the States, we've put a brand on Valentine's Day, for example, Christmas to some extent. We've put a marketing spin on this simple beverage that was really an accident, but now we've made it the ultimate luxury product. And that is another little spin right there. And then, of course, you can't go through a lot of pop culture or even sports without popping a bottle of champagne. After a big win, you got a bottle of sparkling wine for my Philadelphia Eagles victory in the Super Bowl this year. The wine guy had to have that. So, popping bottles, as they say in a lot of famous songs out there as well. So in pop culture, sparkling wine has a huge impact on the celebration, the feel, just getting sprayed in the face with the wine and having a good time. You just think about the fun and the revelry that goes along with that. And of course, New Year's Eve, weddings, graduations, popping that bottle of bubbly just feels special, doesn't it? So let's talk a little bit about how sparkling wines are made. Not all sparkling wines are made the same way. You kind of heard me reference that a little bit earlier. So let's quickly break down the top production methods of sparkling wine, starting with what I mentioned earlier, the traditional method or méthode champenoise, and that is, let's call it the best of the best. Again, you drink what you like. If you're not a big champagne person, you prefer Prosecco or you prefer California sparkling wine over a bottle of champagne, you know what? Fantastic. But, it is the original method, so we're going to call that the best of the best. The way that goes down is there is a secondary fermentation that happens inside the bottle. And when that fermentation is happening, as I mentioned, the main side effect of fermentation is the release of carbon dioxide. And when you trap that fermentation, when you trap that carbon dioxide in that bottle, what's going to happen is that carbon dioxide is going to get mixed back into the liquid solution until you open that bottle again. And what happens is we have been able to harness that secondary fermentation. We're creating those fine, delicate bubbles. We pop off the cap, we release all of the gunk that is built up from that secondary fermentation, we put a cork in it, and then we add a cage on top to make sure that cork does not fly out of the top of that bottle. And that is how champagne and notably cava are made in that style. The tank method, I referred to it earlier as the Charmat method, is instead of fermenting again the wine in the bottle, we are putting the wine, the still wine, in a large tank, typically stainless steel, airtight. And what's going to happen is we add more yeast and more sugar to that wine. The yeast eats that sugar, creates CO2, and again, the carbon dioxide that is produced during that fermentation is then mixed back into the solution, and we get those nice bubbles. Prosecco is noted for being made in the Charmat method. And this method, by the by, also gives you that more fruity and floral characteristic in your sparkling wine. There is another method called the ancestral method, or in the industry, we shorten that down to petnat. This is arguably the oldest method of making sparkling wine. It's a little bit wilder, it's a little bit funkier, it's a little bit unpredictable, but people love petnat for its natural appeal. If you like a little bit of funk in your wine, you're going to be able to ask your local wine merchant for a wine that was made in the petnat or the ancestral method. Now, I talked a lot about the champagne method, or the method champenoise, the traditional method, being the first method of making wine. And that is true to a point. Of course, just like still wine was made naturally, in the fields of Georgia 8,000 years ago, of course, secondary fermentation was happening then as well. What we've learned to do in this ancestral method, or this petnat method, we've been able to take that more wild secondary fermentation and harness it and put it into the bottle for you to enjoy. So the next time you're drinking bubbly, take a second to appreciate the craft and all of the labor, and I haven't even gone into everything that happens while that fermentation is going on. I could talk for hours about this, but I won't. So make sure that, as always, you are appreciating the product that is in your glass. You heard me talk a few weeks ago about how wine is made, and I really, really hoping that you have a better appreciation for all of the labor, the love, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making that bottle of sparkling wine. So now that we know where sparkling wine comes from, now that we know a little bit of story behind it, now that we know how it's made, let's talk about actually drinking sparkling wine. And I'm going to give you a few tips for drinking sparklers like a pro, like I always do. Serving temperature, you definitely want to keep your sparkling wines cold. And unlike in my last solo episode where I talked about keeping dessert wines a little bit warmer, we want to keep sparkling wine cold, cold, cold. Throw it in an ice bath, throw it in an ice bucket, stick it in the freezer for 20 minutes to get it down to temperature. You want that wine to be cold. Warm, bubbly is no bueno. No, no bueno. Glassware. There's a lot of debate nowadays. Do we drink sparkling wine out of a flute? Do we drink it out of a regular glass? Do we drink it out of a coupe glass, which is shaped kind of like one of those old-fashioned Manhattan glasses, up on the stem with the small little bowl on it? That's called a coupe. Whatever you drink your sparkling wine out of, do it your way. But I will say that drinking your sparkling wine out of a white wine glass, very similar to drinking sweeter wines or dessert wines out of a white wine glass, you are going to get more air contact over that wine, which is going to allow the aromas to really kick up out of that wine in that glass. And as you hear me talk about all the time, Smell is 80% of what we taste. So the more you can smell, the more you can taste. So if you like to drink your sparkling wines out of a flute, please do. If you like to drink your sparkling wine out of a plastic Slurpee cup, with the Star Wars logo on it, that's cool too. But go for the white wine glass, which is the smaller type of wine glass, and that is going to be the best option, in my opinion, for you. We joked around about popping bottles, earlier, and yes, it's a lot of fun. It's a big commotion, and it looks cool, and but you're going to get sticky. It's going to be all over the floor, etc., etc. Don't pop it like in the movies. Instead, if you're at home, of course, if you just won the championship, go ahead and pop all the bottles you want. But if you're at home, I don't recommend it. What you want to do instead is, after you have removed the cage from the top of that bottle, you are going to gently twist the bottle from underneath. Let me show you what I'm talking about. You're going to remove the cage, you're going to hold the cork, and you're going to twist the bottle. And what that is going to do is that is going to give you a nice, gentle opening without the big, and it's going to give you a more classy way of doing it, if you want to put it that way. And most importantly, I would say, don't save the bubbly for a special occasion. Life is to be enjoyed. If you are a sparkling wine fan, you can get a lot of great sparkling wines, Prosecco, sparkling wine from California. You can get those really on the cheap here in the States, and they are readily available in most shops. Most of them are pretty good. Some of them are not, of course, as most things, but they're really good. If you like sparkling wine, just go out and do it. Buy a bottle of sparkling instead of buying a bottle of still wine. Have it with your fish, have it with your steak, whatever you're going to enjoy it with, and just enjoy it. Life itself is a special occasion, so drink the good stuff whenever you feel like it. Go out there and enjoy yourself, people. That is what I'm trying to say. All right, that is going to wrap things up for today's episode. Sparkling wine has such a rich history, deep cultural significance, and so many different styles to explore. Whether you're into champagne, whether you're into Prosecco, or something new world, sparkly, there is a bubbly out there for everyone. So get out there and explore, have a good time. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, everyone, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes. And hey, I would absolutely love to hear from you. If you want to shoot me a DM, if you want to shoot me an email, cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's thewineguy.vin. Shoot me a message. I would love to answer your questions. I would love to hear your comments, your feedback on what you got going on. And leave me a comment here on social media as well, and tell me what your go-to sparkling wine is. Hit me up. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Remember, as always, please keep wondering and wandering. Enjoy yourselves. You drink what you like. Cheers, and I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Pour and Explore. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your stories, and your questions, so you can drop me a line at cheers@thewineguy.vin. That's cheers@thewineguy.vin. Or let's connect on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook. Grab those links on my website at thewineguy.vin. Until next time, let's keep wondering and wandering. Cheers, everyone.